Hello, Internet. What's happening? Welcome to our podcast, Mass Media Hysteria. I am your host, Court. I would like to introduce my esteemed guest. This here is Chris.
How's it going, everyone?
And we're welcoming back Andris to the show.
Howdy.
And here's how today's show is going to go. We've got 4 topics that we're going to cover. First, we are going to talk about episode 2 of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which was titled The Star-Spangled Man. This will be a full spoilers review. Then we are going to talk about the first episode of Invincible, which is the new animated superhero show from Amazon Prime, based on the comic by Robert Kirkman, I believe is his name, who also is known for writing The Walking Dead. That will be a spoiler-free and then a spoilers review. So we'll talk about sort of general thoughts on our show because we all kind of agreed that going into this thing blind was the way to do it. So if you haven't seen it yet, you want to know if we're going to recommend it, we will say that. Then we will give you a spoiler warning, and I'll put the time code on the screen to let you know where to jump ahead to if you want to skip the spoiler talk. Then Warner Brothers recently, a couple days ago, released the first official trailer for The Suicide Squad, which is being written and directed by James Gunn. We are going to talk in depth about that because it's quite a trailer. And then finally, Andris has one of his patented discussion questions. Andris, do you want to tell us what that question is?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about TV adaptations of films.
All right. And we'll go more in depth into that question when we get there. So without further ado, Andris, unlike WandaVision, Andris is actually watching Falcon and Winter Soldier. So all three of us, are going to jump in on this conversation. And of course, drop in the comments whatever you guys thought of the episode. And let's do it. So Andris, I'm going to start with you this time. What were your overall thoughts before we get into specifics on this particular episode?
Now, for me, I've always been the type of person where I never judge a show based on the first episode. Because first episodes, they can be very clunky. They're establishing a world, they're establishing characters. They're not really going to hook you with what the show is actually going to be like. So I always give 5 or 6 episodes. And this episode, I watched the first one. Okay, sure. This one, though, I was like, hello, what have we here? So yeah, I'm on board.
Chris?
Yeah, it's a good follow-up episode. I enjoyed the pilot. I thought it was some good setup. This one really kind of jumped right into what I think the meat of the show is going to be, which is the relationship between Bucky and Sam, the Falcon and Winter Soldier. So finally being able to see that, because they weren't even on screen together in the first episode. So yeah, I enjoyed it. And if the show is going to go in this direction to kind of have, their patented kind of clunky relationship, their combative kind of love-hate relationship, then I'm all on board.
And I will say for me, I also enjoyed the first episode quite a bit. I did think this episode was better in almost every way, except for one thing, which I'll get to, but I did find it was quite a bit more dramatic. I thought the acting was just as good. I thought the action was almost as good. It was quite a bit funnier. The first episode didn't have a whole lot of humor.
Mm-hmm.
So I quite like this episode. And I'll go into specifics first. And I said this in my review. Before I talk about this episode, I have to jump back to the ending of the last episode where we get revealed who is now John Walker, played by Wyatt Russell. We see him as the new Captain America being revealed. We see Sam looking absolutely broken. And at the end of that episode, I was just like, I don't care who this character is. I don't care what he does. I hate this guy because he just made Sam really, really sad. And one thing I liked about this episode was that the cold open really kind of recontextualized that character, that scene where he's in the locker room before the big reveal in the gymnasium, or not gymnasium, but in the football field. And we see that he's just kind of a normal guy. He doesn't seem to be someone who's purposefully usurping Sam or anything like that. He's a guy who's been given this opportunity. He's a very well decorated soldier, and he's just got a lot of pressure on him right now.
Yeah.
How did you guys feel about that sort of giving us a little bit more of a look at the character himself?
Do you want to go first, Chris, or should I go first?
I can go first. Yeah, at the end of the first episode, we only get one shot of him, And I feel like the general consensus from everyone on the internet was like, who the hell is this jabroni? He just looked like a dork. I mean, we were talking about it before. I mean, he's Kurt Russell's kid. He's a good looking dude. Something about his ears poking out. He just looked, dorky, but also, aesthetics aside, it's just like, who's this guy? Like you said, like he took up this mantle that was given to Sam. You're already like way against him by the start of this episode. But not just the cold opening, but I think that throughout the episode, they did a really good job of not making him just ultra douchebag. I think it would have been easy to kind of just make him the villain. And, I still think that it's probably going to go in that route. Like, I think there's going to be a kind of an evil kind of arc to him throughout the series. I could be wrong, but I did appreciate that in this episode. Yeah, they made him like a legit guy. It starts off with him being kind of nervous, even though he says he isn't nervous. It's clear he has a lot of anxiety. He's feeling the pressure of kind of stepping into this. He seems like a legitimate person, and throughout the episode, they did a good job of making him likable to an extent. He's not. Yeah, he even says something to jump ahead a bit, essentially that he's not trying to be Steve Rogers. He's just trying to do the best that he can. Yeah, so I thought I appreciated that aspect of it to kind of make it a little more gray.
Andres?
I am in full agreement, actually. I was worried about that. I mean, it would have been very easy for them just to make this guy, as you said, just a douche, but they didn't make him a cynical character, or at least not inherently. I don't know if they're going to. I kind of hope they don't, to be honest. Like, that's so overplayed, I feel like. And it's refreshing just to have, like, he's a guy. He's taken up this mantle. One thing that I did like, though, is it kind of goes back a bit if you think about it. This is why it didn't honestly bother me as much when they announced the new captain. What the show is doing is they're exploring symbols and the power of symbols. If you think back to the first Captain America film, he didn't start out as a superhero. He started out as a super soldier. It was a failed experiment, so they just turned him into a product to sell war bonds. And I feel like it was kind of a throwback to, they were talking about, we need some normalcy, we need some dependency. Here comes Captain America 2.0. And that's what I got about that.
Well,
okay, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, yeah, you're 100% right, Andres. To the extent that this episode, like Court said, is called "The Star-Spangled Man," and that's obviously a throwback to the montage with the show tune from the first Avengers, where he's a star-spangled man with the plan, and all the dancing and stuff when he was selling the war bonds and stuff. They also had like a little bit of a musical kind of homage to it with the at the football stadium. So yeah, it was a cool way to kind of go full circle to be like, hey, new Captain America, how's he going to start out? It's just he's a product. He's essentially, like I said, he's a symbol. It's more about having someone in the costume than specifically who's in it.
Yeah.
And one thing I sort of took is, like, I still don't know how I feel about this character, because he does seem like his heart is in the right place. It seems like he wants to do the right thing. It seems like he's a team player, but there are a number of moments in this episode where he just came across as like really kind of smug and kind of up his own ass. And I like that there are those layers to him. And I don't need him to go full villain. I don't need him to go full hero. I kind of like the idea of he's a good guy who's just a jerk. I'd be into that.
He's a military guy. That's what it is. So that's that military utilitarian, not dressing anything up, just bulldozing through things. I have to admit, I was surprised to see that, they were putting him actually out there to combat things, which is an interesting, like in the old one, or the first one, the Captain America film, he wasn't going out and about into the front lines. Here we actually see him going out there, even though, as far as we know, he's not a super soldier.
Right. Yeah, and we'll get to that sequence, because I did actually quite like that reveal. That was kind of cool. So the episode starts with this reveal and John Walker, and then we jump to Sam getting ready to go on this mission, I believe. And Bucky shows up, And, Bucky's really giving him the gears, like, why did you give up the shield? Why are you letting this happen? And that's, again, this is the first time we've seen them on screen together in this particular series, and that curmudgeonly combative nature is there, but the banter is so good, and these two guys have such great chemistry.
Yeah.
That I was really enjoying it. And that conversation about wizards and hobbits, and I read The Hobbit in 1937 when it came out, and a sorcerer is just a wizard without a hat. That had me laughing out loud. I loved that.
There's oh
no, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm really digging the buddy cop vibe we're getting out of these two. They look the same age, but Bucky is clearly way older, and he's got, a chip on his shoulder, and then Falcon also has a chip on his shoulder. There's two chips. Everybody's got chips on the shoulders. It's great. Mm-hmm. It's great.
Yeah. I thought that it was a little awkward, the actual kind of like introduction. I mean, because it's about them. We've seen them on screen before, but since they were apart for the first episode, I thought there'd be kind of like more of a bigger sort of entrance for when they kind of like get together. But it was literally just like Bucky walked up like, "Hey Sam," like, "Oh, okay, I guess they're on screen together again." But that was overtaken by, like you said, the really great banter that was terrific in this scene, but continued throughout the episode. Just, yeah, it was consistently funny. Some none of them really kind of like felt like clunkers to me. I mean, not everything they said was laugh out loud hilarious, but none of it felt like kind of cringy humor. It was all very enjoyable. And like I said, I think that the Kevin Feige and the team at MCU really picked up on the fact of how good these two actors are together in this love-hate relationship. And yeah, so like I said, if the rest of the series is going to kind of keep this up, I'm very excited.
Agreed. So then let's see, where do we go from there? So then they're on the plane, the cargo plane or whatever, and Sam, of course, does his thing. He jumps out, and there's banter about how they don't have a plan, and I think there's a bit of that staring game happening. And finally, Bucky just jumps out without a chute. They're very low to the ground. They're 200 feet off the ground or something, but he's a super soldier, so he just jumps out, crashes hard into the ground. And like, I really felt that impact. Like I don't know if it was the sound editing or what, but it was impactful. And then probably my favorite line in the episode, excuse me, Red Wing comes in and you just hear Sam go, I got all of that on camera, right? And that also made me laugh out loud. I enjoyed that very much. Mm-hmm. But then I think they're infiltrating the sort of warehouse.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah, they kind of go into spy mode, and some more great banter of them kind of sneaking around and doing a little reconnaissance before the big old action scene.
Right. And so this is them sort of investigating the flag smashers, this group who are loading up this truck, and they think there's a hostage inside. And I don't know, maybe this is just me, and I mentioned this in my review, but when Bucky goes and opens the truck, there are all these crates that they say frozen on the side of the crate. And in my head, just as a joke, I was like, it's probably shipments of the Pfizer vaccine. and then Bucky goes, they're stealing medicine. It's vaccines. And I was like, well,
there you go.
I beat you to it, show.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
No, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, that, it's that whole sequence leading up to it. Great banter as well. And then it goes into the pretty well done, fight scene. Essentially, two people fighting on top of two trucks. That was pretty thrilling. It wasn't like, I agree, probably you haven't said it specifically, Court, but I don't think it was as thrilling as the opening action sequence from the first episode. But it was still well done. And what I appreciated is that they still injected character moments throughout. Like, there's little moments like they're fighting and Red Wing just gets destroyed, and Bucky says something like, "Oh, I always wanted to do that." Just I appreciated that, not just that it's humor, but they still were like, hey, even in this big bombastic kind of action sequence, we're still going to have character moments that feel true to both who Sam and Bucky are.
Andris?
Interestingly enough, I had the opposite. I felt like this chase or this fight sequence was way more thrilling than the first one.
Mm.
This is something you guys didn't mention that I picked up when I watched it the first time. The when they're fighting on the airplane, there's no depressurization when he just tears that door off, and that really took it out for me. It was a very quiet fight, so I kind of was like, wait, this is 10,000 feet in the air. It took me out of the moment. But this one I felt like was way more like, oh, this is happening. They're on the truck. So it was way more for me. Yes.
Fair enough.
Well, and I will say, like, we've talked about the director, Carrie Skoglund, I think it is.
Mhm.
And I mean, she directed the heck out of this action scene too. Again, for me, a little bit heavy on the shaky cam,
Mhm.
but that moment where Falcon goes under the trucks to save Bucky, and the POV shots on like from Sam's back, like you can sort of see the back of his head as he's flying around. Those were awesome.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
And
Yeah,
then
okay.
No, please.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, no, there's some really great moments and some kind of cool, interesting shots. And one thing I would say is that like there was a similar kind of on top of a moving vehicle fight in The Mandalorian. I thought The Mandalorian.
I thought of that scene too.
Yeah, The Mandalorian I thought had better green screen. Like it wasn't bad, but there was kind of something that I noticed. It's like I mean, it's kind of like no duh, but like yeah, it's clear that these people were fighting not on trucks in going however fast down the freeway. You could kind of tell the green screen halo around him, but it was still good.
Well, and I did quite enjoy the reveal of the new Captain America, and what's his name, Battlestar, I think is his sidekick.
Battlestar Galactica.
Let me see. Yeah, Battlestar, correct.
Battlestar. I think his name is Hoskins or something. But
Yes.
they jumped into the fight, and you could immediately see that Bucky and Sam were, I guess they knew they needed help, but they were not really on board with having these guys on board with the fight. But
Totally.
I liked seeing them fight, and it's pretty well revealed in that sequence that these flag smashers are super soldiers or something along those lines.
And the new captain and Battlestar are not. Right. That's what I took away from that. I was just like, oh, these guys are gonna get killed within 4 episodes if they don't shape up.
Right.
Because they came in there like, yeah, here we go. Oh, they're gone.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too that they aren't super soldiers, which seems like they're way behind the 8 ball now, because it's like, how are you going to compete against the villains, these super soldiers that are just gonna like whoop their ass? And they held their own pretty well, but I appreciated that it never felt kind of too overpowered. Like they made him competent. They didn't make him jokes either. Like that's another thing I appreciated, is that one, the new Captain America, he's not a douche seemingly so far, and 2, he's not a joke. He didn't come in and was super cocky and then just like did nothing. He held his own for a bit, and even kind of he did the cool thing where he threw the shield and he saved his friend Battlestar Galactica from hitting the ground. So I thought that was cool. That was another thing that kind of made me kind of like more behind this character than I thought I would, is that like this guy, he knows his stuff. He seems like at least a quality fighter, even without super soldier juice.
As far as we know.
Right. And I will say, for me, the whole flag smashers subplot, I talked about last week that the Sam subplot with his sister was, aside from the bank scene, that was where the episode lost me a little bit. It was a little bit dry. The story with the flag smashers in this episode was kind of the same for me, up until that final scene where they're escaping in the plane. That was kind of cool and kind of got me more interested in that storyline. But for me, this episode was really all about Sam and Bucky and their trials and tribulations, if you will.
I will say, I wish they would have chosen a better name, because Flag Smashers is such a clunker to say out loud.
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah, I'm interested. I hope they do more with them. I think they will, but their philosophy, their ideology is kind of fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Even if the scenes so far haven't been that great, but just the idea, because we didn't really talk about it that much last week, Court, but their intention of just trying to get the world back to when it was during the blip. That's interesting. That's kind of an interesting concept of people fighting kind of seemingly these terrorists seemingly so far, to get the world back to where it's down like 3 to 4 billion people. That's cool. And if they explore that kind of philosophy more and make it sort of conflicted for the viewer, the same way that Thanos's kind of ideologies to an extent like led to conversation among fans, that would be interesting. If they don't really touch on it, if they're just kind of like bad guy super soldiers for the rest of the series, then that would be a waste, in my opinion.
So you
Oh.
support mass genocide?
No, it's not at all. I'm not saying I agree with them, but I appreciate villains that have a motive that isn't just world domination.
Right.
You mean villains that aren't like Saturday morning cartoon characters? That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting, like when you can, it's one of those things where it's like, even if you don't agree with the ideology, you can acknowledge that there is an ideology. Not to harp on it, part of the, to go back quickly to the Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League. That was one thing when it's like, oh, Darkseid's in this movie. What do you think about Darkseid? And it's like, he was just kind of evil. He was just evil. Like they gave Steppenwolf motivation, but Darkseid was just, I want to do evil stuff for evil reasons. And that's not as compelling as like,
Thanos.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and even when it comes to like an ideology that you don't subscribe to, if there's that part of your brain that can go like, but I can understand why some people would believe this, that makes it a lot easier to sort of connect with a villain and understand where they're coming from.
Exactly.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to mention that this episode establishes is, they're meeting people who are supporting their cause. They're like calling them like modern Robin Hoods. It's fascinating because it's not like black and white. We're seeing people who are like, it's more organic. That's one of the things I will say about this series so far is everything. This is kind of tying into what we've been saying. Is everything feels very natural and organic. Nothing feels like stylized. It's just you're like, that's
yeah, for sure.
So where does the episode go after? So we see them kind of all in the Jeep, and it's very frosty between the two factions of Sam and Bucky and John and Hoskins. Where does it jump from there? Is that when it goes to Baltimore?
Yeah, pretty much. They're like they talk for a bit, they go back on the plane, and Bucky's like, I have someone that you need to meet, and that's when they go to Baltimore.
Okay.
Yes.
And while they're there, it's it's kind of building up like, who's this person that they're going to meet?
Mephisto.
It's Mephisto. Oh my God. It's Reed Richards. It's everybody. Yeah, I know. Seriously, I had a flashback to WandaVision of like, don't set up some promise of some big cameo that's not going to happen. So I kept my expectations low, and I'm glad I did, because it's not a big, the person that they visit is not a big character. It's not a big like actor, but it's more interesting in that they meet a guy named Isaiah Bradley. And he's kind of an older man. He's an older black man that was also we find out was a super soldier. A little bit after Cap's time, but not that much. Like he was fighting in the Korean War, so about a decade later, and he had like kind of an interaction with the Winter Soldier at that time. But it's really interesting because they're trying to get information from him, and he's so guarded and he's so defensive because but understandably so, because he's talking about like how screwed over he got from the government. And I thought that was really interesting. There's a couple things in this like 5-10 minute block sequence where I was like, okay, MCU is not really joking around in this regard, and they're actually touching on some pretty heavy issues, some pretty realistic issues that you don't typically see in superhero stuff like this. One of them is just how screwed over like veterans are, they can be from the government, and kind of how people, he was a super soldier at this time, but nobody knew about it. Sam was like, how the hell did nobody talk about this? How did nobody know that there was a black super soldier around this time? It was all about Steve Rogers and Captain America, but this guy who, could be just as strong, forget about him. And that's messed up.
And
Mhm.
I should say the character was played by Carl Lumbly, who I've seen in a couple things. He was did you guys see Doctor Sleep?
No.
Yes. Yeah.
So he was the I guess the recast for Dick Halloran. I
Oh,
really liked him
nice.
in that. But
Yeah.
he's also done a lot of voice work, and he's actually been the voice of speaking of Justice League, he's been the voice of Martian Manhunter in a bunch of things.
I could
Oh.
see it.
Bunch of animated things. So
I
that's
could see
cool.
it.
And I will say, like, that was my favorite scene of the episode. I thought he was phenomenal in it.
Mhm.
The end of the scene where he like throws the flask into the wall and he's just like his face is trembling with rage.
Mhm.
And it's just like that performance. I really hope this guy is still going to be part of this series. I hope that's not a one and done.
Yeah. Mhm. I feel like it can't be. I mean, that'd be such a weird waste if it was really like just you're in it for one scene. They make a big deal out of it, and then he's gone. I feel like they have to have him back at least a couple times, right?
I,
Right.
th- I think
I
they
hope so.
will. I think they will because he wasn't established as a MacGuffin generator, so they didn't like there wasn't a reason to introduce that character in that scene aside from like, hey, this happened. You know what I mean? Like, I feel
Mhm.
like there's more to be done with this character from here.
Yeah,
That's true. I mean, you could have just had Bucky tell Sam about him.
Yeah.
If you were
exactly.
if
Yeah,
you weren't going to bring him back, why you didn't need to show him. But
yeah.
and we were mentioning the sort of we talked last week about the sort of racial divide that Sam's having to deal with, even though the fact he's an Avenger, that really excuse me, that really comes to a head in this episode, particularly with the character of Isaiah, because like you said, yeah, he's a super soldier, but he's black, so they didn't want to, uh, make him this big hero because of
Mhm.
the time and what have you. But then shortly after that sequence, when Bucky and Sam leave and they get into an argument, and this was very, very telling, but they're pulled over by the police.
Hmm.
They're two white cops, and immediately they're talking to Bucky like, "Is everything okay?" And they're trying to like pull Sam away, and it was like it was really intense, and it was very like it was profound, and it was like gross. And what did you guys
Mhm.
take from that scene?
Well, there is something. It is also bookended. The Isaiah scene. It's preceded by the scene where he's like, "Hey, there's the two kids walking.
Mhm.
Like they're
Yes.
walking by, and the kid's like, "Hey, Black Falcon." He's like, "You called Black Kid?" And he's like,
Yeah.
"Haha, no." Uh, so you had that, and then you had the Isaiah scene, and then you had the cop scene. You had very different situations where it's talking about race.
Mhm.
Once again, organically, naturally. And it was, they could have taken it in a more cynical direction. They could have taken it a more sensational, but it's just very natural.
Mhm.
It was very nuanced. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, no, it's terrible what happens. You're disgusted and outraged, but you're like, yeah, that does happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to that scene that you mentioned, Andres, of when he's just walking down the street and the kids are like, "Hey, it's Black Falcon." In the first episode, we talked about a court that it's kind of subtly touched on, but this one kind of went full on where it's like completely 100% addressing ethnicity.
Yeah.
And that's not something that, like I said, besides Black Panther. The MCU's kind of stayed away, even though they've had black actors kind of be a part of the show and stuff, or part of the franchise. They usually just kind of like don't mention it at all. Like everything's cool, everything's perfect, blah blah blah. But
Yeah.
this really is like addressing like, no, he's Sam is a black man, and in America that means something.
Yeah,
It has,
the movies played it more safe, and then here
Mhm.
with the show, they're really getting ambitious and like pushing things in a great way, though, I'd say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I agree. I think it's terrific in that whole sequence. As soon as they're walking down the street and a cop car pulls up, I feel like, I mean, I don't know if this is universal, but I feel like for people living in kind of United States or North America, like Canada as well, you instantly are like, oh shit, because
Yeah.
it's and there's racial profiling and there's prejudice that still runs very deep within Western society. Um, and it was a big, it's not surprising, but in a depressing way, not like, oh, this is like, I didn't see that come, or I saw this coming, but it's more like, yeah, this is real. Like, he's an Avenger and he still gets treated like shit, he still gets treated like this. um and they really only kind of back off once they realize, oh, he's a kind of a celebrity. You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
don't quite say it, but they're like, do you know who that is? Whisper, whisper, whisper. I'm like, oh, okay. And that's messed up. And I appreciate that they're going for it, that they're actually addressing it.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to add that I'm appreciating about this is the fact that, like, people always say, "Oh, well, the MCU is safe. The MCU is very watered down." Here, we're seeing them push these things in the front, the forefront, which is great because things like this, they should challenge things. They should have a message. It shouldn't just be a popcorn flick. And especially if we're talking about comic books. Comic books have spent decades confronting everything from race to gender to orientation, and here we're not getting bubblegum anymore. It's like, hey, this is real. This is a thing, and this is how we feel about it.
And it's for me, it's fine to make a popcorn flick that doesn't go there, but if you're gonna have this connected universe that's like 15 projects at this point, at some point you're gonna want to go there.
Yeah,
you're gonna want a little cake with your frosting,
right?
Yeah.
So then moving on, the cops find out that there is a warrant out for Bucky's arrest because he missed his court mandated therapy, so he's taken to jail. The therapist shows up, and the therapist shows up and makes Sam come in for a sort of a co-therapy session between the two of them. And this is something I find the show does very well, going back to the Black Falcon, Black Kid scene, which was like the idea was there, but it was kind of funny, and Sam was really charming in that moment. And then you get to Isaiah's house and everything just flips on a dime from comedy to drama. And that's something this sequence did so seamlessly, because this scene starts, I mean, you want to talk about chemistry between these two guys. It starts so funny when she tells them to do, like, look into each other's eyes, and they're arguing about moving their chairs closer and closer. I was laughing. The staring contest starts happening,
interlocking their knees.
Yeah. But then it takes this complete switch, and they decide they're going to finish this mission, and then they're going to go their separate ways for a long time or what have you. But the line that really stood out to me, and like, kudos to Sebastian Stan for the delivery of this line, and Sam's line was good at the end too, but I this one really specifically stood out to me because both of these characters have such reverence for Steve Rogers. But he says, maybe Steve was wrong about you, talking to Sam, and he's like, if he was wrong about you, then maybe he was wrong about me. And of course, Steve was the one guy who always had Bucky's back. And I thought there was so much subtext to that. There was so much like emotional anguish to that realization of his. How did that scene play for you guys? How did that line play?
I mean, we've seen from the first episode how much guilt that Bucky has. And so just like hearing him say it, and like you said, the delivery by Stan was terrific. Is that this dude is so messed up internally. He has so much guilt and PTSD, and he really does just see himself as this monster, as this irredeemable monster. And it seems like Steve was the only guy that had his back, was the only one that was like, no, you're still good. There's still good within you. And yeah, it's just adding that extra layer of kind of subtext for why Bucky was so adamant about Sam taking up the mantle. Yeah, I thought that was great. Again, it's more kind of it's a little more deeper than just kind of like your average kind of motivation for kind of a superhero. So I thought that was, I really enjoyed that. I will say, I think that woman, is a shit therapist. Like,
yes.
The scene felt a bit choppy to me before it got to the meat of it, where it seemed like there was more to it, and they kind of cut it down. There was a couple jarring, like, oh, let's do this. Okay, let's do this. Okay, let's do this. And it's like, oh, what do you do? Like, you're trying these therapeutic methods for 5 seconds each. But also her line of like, I'm talking to Bucky. Also, Sam, you're coming with me. It's not a request or something. And it's like, who the fuck are you? Like, right. I'm not in your custody. I'm a free agent. Like, what? I don't need to go with you. Fuck off. Gonna bleep that twice. But besides that, I thought that was a good scene. Like, it led to some great interactions that weren't just funny banter between the two of them. It was actual like pathos.
Andris?
I'm wondering, now that you mentioned that, is there any other reason she's being such a crap therapist? Like, is there something we don't know about her? Because
Hmm.
so far, the 2 times we've seen her on screen, she doesn't really seem invested in what she's doing. Like,
Mhm.
she's his wrangler, Bucky, to a degree, where it's
Mhm.
like, we have to do this. But yeah, no, I'm agreeing. It's just, it was choppy, it was unnatural. The scene itself overall, once again, it was very natural and
Mhm.
organic.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, that's got me wondering now, like, is there anything else going on?
Mephisto confirmed, everybody. Okay, she is.
It's true. It's true. You
Yeah.
heard it here first.
Hot scoops, everyone.
You probably didn't hear it here first. The show's been out for a few days. I'm sure that's all over the internet.
Mhm.
So basically, then John Walker shows up, and because he's Captain America, they're allowed to leave, and they kind of have a little tete-a-tete, and they're talking about maybe teaming up and maybe not teaming up, and then he does his kind of smug line of like, if you're not going to work with me, then like stay the hell out of my way.
Mhm.
It's just like, yeah, but like this guy's a super soldier and this guy can fly, and you're just
And you've been Captain America for 10 minutes, kid.
right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I meant when I was saying he's being rather smug.
Yeah.
Do you guys have thoughts on that scene before we move on, or?
I can't remember who said it, if it was Bucky or Sam, but one of them is just like, there you go with that line, because he everything's fine, and then Captain America 2.0 delivers just a line that takes everyone out of the moment, and it happens with both of them.
Mhm.
And it's just like, you might be Captain America in costume, but you don't have the people skills, my friend.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the smugness definitely came across, which is why he's not. I don't see him being like a lovable character or one that's going to win over the fans' hearts or anything, because I don't think he's intended to. Like I said, he seems like a real person. He has dimension in character and conflict, but he's not Steve Rogers in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. It's not just a super soldier thing. And even though he's not a douche, he's got kind of this unearned confidence, and he's you know what I mean? Like it's so
It, it's that authoritative military character. He's just, because he's served, he's just, well, this is who I am, this is what I do. And it's
Yeah.
like he's hitting brick walls, because it's like, yeah, okay, but there's more to the uniform.
Yeah. And like, just to semi speculate ahead, we do see, if you've seen any trailers or anything for this, that like at some point Bucky and Sam get the shield back. So I'm wondering if this unearned confidence that John Walker has is gonna end up to bite him in the ass at the end. You know, like it seems like that kind of cockiness, especially if he is really not super, he doesn't have any super powers, it's going to be like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't try to take on this whole army by yourself. Maybe you do need the Winter Soldier and Falcon, you douche.
Well,
We have, oh, go on.
I was going to say, I could see it possibly going two ways. Like maybe, they tell him he's not worthy of the shield or whatever, but I think it would actually be better if he came to the realization that he is not worthy of the shield and makes the choice to give it back to Sam.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
I'd like that.
Or conversely, there could also just be, because we've seen like a few times now where this new 2.0 captain, he's like on the verge of getting, taken out in these situations, in these fights. He can hold his own, but not so much. I feel like, well, maybe Sam and Bucky are gonna just
They just trip him when he's walking down to the cafeteria.
this is gonna be a fight,
and they just
it's
take
like,
his shield.
you can't have this young man.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So what's left in the episode? Is it just the sort of ending scene with the flag smashers and then the big reveal at the end?
Oh yeah. The flag smashers, they're trying to get away on a plane. Someone's
Right.
chasing them. That's one thing. That was the one interesting thing about it, because it was a okay scene. Okay, we got to get on a plane. Someone's chasing us, and I want to know who's chasing them.
Yeah,
Why?
they say the power broker, but that's all they say. So
Yeah, it's Reed Richards, confirmed, guys. John Krasinski. I liked the moment. Ironically, I suppose, of the guy's like, "Don't worry, I'll buy you some time," and then he just gets effing taken out immediately. I thought that was funny. So there's not too much to that scene. Thoughts?
pretty much covers what I was going to say. So
Yeah, the only interesting thing about it was like someone is hell-bent on getting these guys, and it also seems like not like a government agency, or it doesn't seem like the authorities. It seems like someone who's also maybe up to some shady shit that's like, these guys are making it difficult for me. So I want to know who that is.
Black market super soldier creators who are trying to get their serum back.
Could be. Could be.
Well, I mean, if they're going to call them the power broker, if they have access to super serum, I think that actually makes a certain amount of sense.
For sure.
So finally, then it's just Sam and Bucky decide they want to go see Baron Zemo. We get the reveal of him still in prison. And then, of course, 7 minutes of credits.
Yeah, man. For all the people talking about like, oh, I'm so glad this is so much longer than WandaVision, it's not really that much. There's so much credits, and including, you know, the nearly 2 minute long Marvel intro. These are still relatively short. I mean, it's longer episodes than WandaVision, but anyway, regardless of that, that's all right. It's, again, another thing that I think kind of, I'm liking the show, but I'm not 100% hooked. Like I'm going to keep checking it out. I do want to see the next episode, but WandaVision really had me like salivating, like what the hell happens next? This tease of like, Zemo, like, okay.
Yeah, but I mean, like, we knew if he hadn't been in the trailers or something, then it would have been like, whoa. But like, we knew he was coming, so it wasn't like that mind-blowing of a thing.
Yeah. I'm just not like as hooked as I want it to be. I hope that it happens, that I'm like so invested in the story that I can't wait until the next episode. I mean, people made jokes and memes about the ending of WandaVision. Every episode was like, please stand by. And you're just like, no, I don't get that same feeling. I wasn't like, it ended. I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. Check it out next week.
Which is the same way.
Yeah.
Andris?
This is the first serious continuation from Endgame.
Yeah.
That's what I got.
No, I mean, that is interesting. That is an interesting aspect.
And with that, it you know, you're like, we've been watching this since 2008. So it could be a little fatigue because you're like, all right, well, but no, I'm in.
Yeah. All right. We're all in, guys.
We're all in. Okay, I think we should move on to Invincible, episode 1, which I took note of the episode's title.
It's called It's About Time.
It's About Time. Okay. Hang on now.
Are we just talking about the pilot or the first 3 episodes?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Because I didn't finish 3. I thought for some reason you said like all 3 of them, because they think they premiered all at once.
They did. I only watched the first one myself.
Okay.
So
I watched the first 2, which is interesting. Okay, because I watched the second one. I have some thoughts that you boys might find interesting.
Oh my.
All right. So again, like we said, at first we're gonna sort of give some general thoughts about it without going into any specific spoilers. I don't think we really, even once we get to spoilers, I don't think we really need to go beat for beat through the episode. I think maybe just kind of talk about the ending. But we'll get there. So I guess first off, I'll start with you, Andris. Do you want to just give some overall thoughts on it? You went in blind, I think you said.
Yes, I did go in blind. I even looked it up afterwards because I was like, what is this show about? Because it comes across as very we got to make sure we tell people, watch this blind. It's what we're about to say. It might not sound great. Watch this blind. We're going to put a time code to let you know when to skip when we get to the spoilers. Do not watch the spoilers. Trust us on this because trust us on this. What I got was, I got very serious. I'm reading my notes. Timverse / DC animated universe vibes visually from this.
Okay, I could see that.
I didn't really, until those last 10 minutes, I didn't really feel like I spent the entire episode trying to figure out, okay, well, what's this hook? Because, you know, you've got all kinds of different superhero properties out there in show form these days. And it's like, everything has to have a hook that brings you in, that makes it stand out from the rest. I wasn't finding it until those last 10 minutes. I'm going to say it again. Don't watch the spoilers. Come into this blind. We're saying the last 10 minutes, but watch the whole episode leading to the last 10 minutes. Trust us.
Chris?
Yeah, I went in not knowing pretty much anything about this. I'd heard about it. Like I remember reading ages ago that there was an comic book series by Robert Kirkman, the creator of the Walking Dead comic books. Um, I knew it was animated. I knew Stephen Yun was in it, and I heard good things. Like I just scrolling through YouTube, I would see like just kind of other channels that I like Double Toasted, seemed to be like, oh, this is pretty good. So, but at the same time, I didn't know much about it. So I went in and I also saw that it was like rated TVMA, like it was very adult. And again, and it started off with like two like security guards like talking, and I was like, okay, why is this TVMA? Is it going to be like funny? Is it like a Family Guy kind of poking fun at it? And it wasn't. And it kind of was playing out, and it was playing out very earnestly, like very earnestly.
Yeah.
I also got major, Batman the Animated Series and the Justice League Animated Series vibe. And every once in a while, there would be like someone would say ass or someone would say shit. Every once in a
Yeah.
while, and I was like, why does this need to be? I really wasn't picking up why this needed to be TVMA.
Right.
And the vast majority of the episode is pretty much an origin story, reminding me very much of Sam Raimi's original Spider-Man, just kind of young kid, kind of
Yep.
getting superpowers. No spoilers, but it's essentially there's a kind of a group of Justice League like characters, very similar to Justice League. There's like a Batman like character, there's a Wonder Woman like character, but the head honcho is this guy named Omniman, who is essentially Superman. He comes from another planet, and he's super strong, the strongest man in the world, can fly, all that good jazz.
He's also got the distinct superpower of being voiced by J.K. Simmons.
Which is a superpower. Also looking like
Yes.
J. Jonah Jameson. Like he has black hair with the gray kind of sides and the mustache, which I thought was funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you, Andres, I was watching it because you guys asked me to watch it or to recommend it, and I was like, sure. And I was watching it, and I was this close to like message you guys, be like, man, I don't really want to continue watching this show. I mean, it's not bad. I didn't think it was bad. I just thought, I get it. Like I felt like I really got it, and like it's a origin show. It's weirdly rated TVMA. I'm not sure why.
Very generic.
Yeah. The credits happen, and then like I'm not going to go into spoilers, but the credits start happening, and then they stop, and then more continues, and that more that continues made me realize, like you said, Andres, what the hook of the show was and why it was rated TVMA. And I was like, I went from being like, I don't really care about the show, to me being like, I need to watch the next episode immediately because I needed to know what the hell was going on.
Yeah, and I mean, it really does. The main chunk of the episode really, it follows a lot of your standard superhero origin story movies. This kid's finding his powers, he's training, he's got to figure out his costume, he's got to figure out his name, his color scheme, all that kind of stuff. And one thing that I found throughout the episode, it was very earnest there, to the point of almost becoming, in a couple of sequences, almost melodramatic. And that was kind of turning me off. And then when the episode ended, I realized, at least my assumption is, that was very much purposeful, to kind of give you this like false sense of security, to think that this is what this show is. And then it's not.
Yeah.
So I think we're at the point where we should really get into spoilers. Again, we're probably just going to talk about the ending of this episode, the last 10 minutes. Again, like Andres said, if you haven't watched it yet, I will put a time code up, reminder to editing me, put a time code up that'll tell you when to jump to when we're done talking about spoilers. But we're going into spoilers right now.
Woo, woo.
Don't watch this.
That was a siren. That was, in case you couldn't tell, that was me trying to make a siren noise. Woo, woo.
Don't watch this until you've seen it. All
Okay.
right. I'm going to just read my exact reaction in our group chat. We have a group chat, by the way. It's how we do this when we're not on camera, because we have, we do things. Anyway, this was a live response. This was all in caps. What the fuck are the last 10 minutes of Invincible? Jesus Christ. What happens, I'll tell what happens. I'll do the story man part of this. So all of the non-Justice League gets called to their non-Fortress of Solitude, and they're like, who sent it? I thought you sent it.
Non-Hall of Justice, I believe it is.
Yeah,
There you go.
it's
The
the
non-hollow
technical term.
justice.
Yeah.
Yeah, the non-hollow justice, they all get called there and they're like, I thought you sent it. I thought you sent it. And then all of a sudden, Omni-Man just kills all of them in a brutal, insane way. It was so crazy.
Oh yeah.
Like he twisting someone's head and they cough out blood before then their heads are backwards and crushing heads and eyeballs pop out. And speaking of which, I'm gonna break away for a second. Did you guys ever look at the cast for this? Because this is like a Walking Dead reunion. The reason I'm mentioning that is because Steven Yeun is playing the main character, and here's a character whose eyeball gets popped out. Spoilers for Walking Dead if you've never been on the internet before.
Yeah. No, there's this, it's a pretty great cast and surprisingly big names for people that, I mean, assuming are only going to be in one episode. Like Lauren Cohen from The Walking Dead was the Wonder Woman type character. But yeah, I don't think that we can kind of sell just how big of a turn this really was, because like I said, leading up to all of it, it's a 45-minute episode. Didn't have 7 minutes of credits like the MCU movies or the shows. So it was quite long. It felt very much like a Sam Raimi Spider-Man, where it's like, we're learning our powers. Credits happen. And I won't even say the last 10 minutes. I'd say the last maybe 5 minutes, because like part of that 10 minutes is setting up, like you said, they're getting this beacon call. They're like, okay, what's this about? Everything still feels very like something you would see in Cartoon Network. And they
like
get
Justice League. Yeah,
for sure. And just the sheer brutality and like the visceral kind of nature in which Omni-Man comes and, destroys everybody. But I also like that they gave him some shiners too. Like they put up a good fight. But it reminded me, I mean, because Court and you and I, we just watched the Zack Snyder Justice League. And there's a similar sequence of Superman just kind of, fighting the Justice League. And I mentioned this in our group chat as well. I'm like, dude, I feel like if Zack Snyder wants to go hardcore, edgy Justice League, take a cue out of this, where it's like, yeah, this is what would happen if someone that had the powers of Superman just fucking lost it. Because like, what's going to stop you? Yeah, there's blood, there's guts.
Oh yeah.
He's punching through people's fists. So like the whole time when I was thinking, what's with this TVMA rating? That they really was just saved for this last ending, which is like, I think it was such a great rug pull. I thought that was really well done. It really caught me off guard.
It really kind of in one fell swoop, it went from Sam Raimi Spider-Man to like The Boys, like it's that extreme. It really is, even though it's animated, but
it went from Teen Titans to Kick-Ass 2.0, but it's animated. And Jesus Christ.
Some things I want to touch on that weren't the ending. I do want to reiterate that although I wasn't really like loving it, I thought that a lot of the stuff leading up to the ending was still good. And I think that will probably be important going forward. Essentially because it's just kind of like establishing this relationship between Mark, who's played by Steven Yeun, he becomes the superhero called Invincible, and his father, who's Omni-Man by J.K. Simmons. And it's really showing this relationship. Omni-Man is he's the strongest superhero in the world, in a world filled with seemingly a lot of superheroes. Similar to Superman, he comes from a planet where this is just what they do. They just fly. They're just this strong. Their level of strength is just, normal. It's average there. But on Earth, he's unstoppable. And Mark is a bit of a kind of a late bloomer. He's like 18. He hadn't showed any powers yet. And he's really kind of like self-conscious, like when your dad is the greatest superhero in the world. And then he gets his powers and they show him practicing with his dad. It's not bad. It's not bad stuff. It just felt very familiar, but I'm glad that they did it, because I think establishing that kind of relationship with his father is seeing how he seemingly just is evil or lost it at the end. It's like, oh shit, how is this going to play in, and how is it going to affect Mark going forward? Like, your dad's a fucking monster. What?
Not just that. They do have a flashback scene where he's talking to his kid and he's like, from this planet where I'm from, we all have superpowers. And when we reach a certain age, we go out into the universe. Oh, hello. We go out into the universe to help lesser planets. And it's like, okay, so that happened, but then that last scene happens. It's like, well, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And I gotta say, just a little thing that I appreciated in that scene where he's talking to younger Mark and saying, you know, when you're around 18, this is gonna happen, and I'm a superhero, and blah blah blah. It's a little thing. I appreciated it. Younger Mark was wearing a t-shirt that read Canada on it. So,
Hey.
you know,
That's
Yeah.
where you're from.
uh-huh.
Yeah, so would you guys recommend it? Because like I said, it seems like I'm the only one that's seen the second episode. So
Yes.
I have some quick thoughts, none spoiler stuff.
I would recommend the first episode. I know I'm hooked. I can't wait to watch the second one.
I would also recommend it because you're gonna want to know what happens next if you watched it blind, which you should.
Yeah, so I watched the second one, and there's 3 up right now, so I'm gonna watch the third one before I kind of really have a thought on the show, because I thought it was a great hook and a great ending for the first episode. The second episode, though, is okay. It's
Okay.
it doesn't really pick up, like, I mean, it picks up where it left off, and it has a more consistent kind of TVMA rating throughout. Like, it's kind of showing Invincible Mark kind of learning more about his powers, finding other people that have superpowers, and there's bloody violence and stuff. But again, that's when I started to feel kind of the tonal inconsistencies kind of pull me out. Because it seemed like the tonal shift in the first episode was very intentional, and I thought that we're just going to go, you know, balls to the wall going forward, and it's not. It actually takes a step back, and it still very much feels kind of like a Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, but just with like more violence. And that's what's kind of weird, where I'm like, how is this going to work? Like, if it's going to continue in this way, I'm not entirely vibing with it, where it's like, okay, there's graphic scenes of violence, and then like some really corny dialogue between high schoolers about discovering their powers. Again, that's very earnest. So I'm actually kind of on the fence, where I thought it was a great hook, and I think that it could still lead to some really good payoff. But I need to check out the third episode to really know where I stand on this, because right now it seems like it's kind of a mess tonally.
You're worried almost like maybe that first episode was like a gimmick to like throw people off and make them think it's gonna be, but then it is that.
No, it's not a gimmick. It's just I think that like afterwards, just how surprising it was. I thought the rest of the show would be like, okay, we're going to be doing away with the Spider-Man bit. We're going to do away with the kind of the normalness. And it doesn't really. There's some really cool creative ideas with villains and things that happen. But it just felt very conventional. It felt less like they're diving into the full tilt, like we're going in a completely different direction, and more like we're going to be doing the familiar, just with more violence. And that's not as interesting to me.
No, because I mean, it would be a very difficult juggling act to go Teen Titans and Watchmen.
Yeah,
it does sound, if what you're saying, I mean, I believe what you're saying, it sounds like they are going to be trying to do that. Yeah. That's interesting, but no, yeah, I've got my reservations then as well, because it's like, can you do that and still have something that's yours with all of these franchises?
Yeah, it still does leave, you know, the gaping question of like, why the hell did Omni-Man do this? And so that's not answered. So I'm still like, okay, why did this happen? I'm still intrigued, and there's likable characters, some kind of bigger named actors as well that join in, like Gillian Jacobs from Community. You have Jason Mantzoukas, who's like a character actor. You've probably seen him in a million things. Zachary Quinto,
Spock.
As Spock, yeah, he plays Spock. So it's interesting. I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts. If to check it out, because I'm going to watch the third episode as well, and I want to hear if you guys kind of see where I'm coming from, or you're like, nah, dude, you're crazy. I think this is perfect where it's going.
All right, we are going to move on. I should say that in the next couple of days, I'm going to do full spoiler-free review of all 3 episodes. So if you skip the spoilers review here and you just want to know some overall thoughts that we didn't get to earlier on, that should be up maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, somewhere around there. But moving on, our second last topic today is the first official trailer for the Suicide Squad, which I believe comes out in the summer. It's being written and directed by James Gunn. It's interesting to note, after James Gunn was let go by Disney and Marvel before he was eventually hired back, all of the studios kind of went to a bidding war. They were all just trying to get to work with James Gunn. He decided to go with Warner Brothers. And my understanding is they kind of came at him, and this is when they still didn't have a plan going forward for Superman. They said, like, whatever property you want, we will give you. That was part of their bargaining chip. They were like, if you want Superman, he was like, I want Suicide Squad. And I'm curious about this movie because clearly he's really into it. Clearly this is what he really wanted to do. And if you look at it, Suicide Squad, Guardians of the Galaxy, there are a lot of parallels there for sure.
Mhm.
Andris, what were your overall thoughts on the trailer?
To this day, I have not seen the original Suicide Squad film. It looked
Okay.
like a mess. It looked disjointed. I watched Red Letter Media. They destroyed that film justifiably, because it was a mess that was reassembled in the cutting room. And I want to see this one. I want to see this one. And the interesting thing is the fact that the reason the first film, well, I don't know if I can say this because I don't know if I understood and appreciated David Ayer's original vision for Suicide Squad, but it's just fascinating how that film became a disjointed mess because Warner wanted themselves a Suicide or a Guardians of the Galaxy, and who did they get to do what I'm feeling is a soft reboot? The guy who directed Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
It's like a full circle. And yeah, I want it. I want to see it now,
Chris?
or when it comes out.
Oh, wait,
Or that.
yeah. Yeah, same way. I think that the original Suicide Squad is probably my least favorite DCEU movie. It like you said, Andres, it just feels very disjointed. I thought the editing in it was really atrocious, and I never try to like just bash a movie. I don't like speaking in hyperbole of like a worst movie ever, this sucked, like those YouTube kind of like clickbait people.
Yes.
But it really was quite bad. Like I was like, this is it just feels like a mess. But when I heard that James Gunn chose this project to do, when essentially he was like given the keys to
The candy store.
Exactly, just like do pick whatever you want, and he picked this. I was like, yes, because I felt like this really, I think that his sensibilities really lend itself to this. Like he's proven himself in two ways. One, to be like great working with on like an ensemble piece, like writing multiple characters, having that kind of team dynamic a la Guardians of the Galaxies. But he also comes, if for people who don't know, James Gunn came up from
Trauma, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, he cut his teeth working for Trauma Studios. For Trauma, people don't know.
What?
Yeah, man. He was one of the writers for like the Toxic Avenger and stuff like that. Maybe not the original, but like a couple of them. He wrote Tromeo and Juliet. For people
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, for people who don't know, Trauma is a very, very low budget or very, very small kind of independent film studio that was big in like the 80s, big to an extent, in the 80s and 90s, early 2000s. Essentially, they would make schlocky horror, violent, exploitation films. A lot of fun, a lot of camp, but very, very R-rated. A lot of nudity, a lot of cussing, a lot of drugs, blah, blah, blah. And so marrying that, I was kind of hoping, I'm like, man, I love the Guardians movies, but I'm hoping to see James Gunn go back to his kind of R-rated roots and really just kind of fly off the handle. And yeah, I can't wait for this movie. I was excited before, but the trailer really just reaffirmed his style works so well. There was some truly like laugh out loud moments in this for me. Some great energy to it, just little things that I noticed. Like from the beginning, there's this conversation that's happening within a van, and all in James Gunn is just kind of whip panning back and forth between the characters. There's so much like energy and style.
It makes you feel like you're in the van, like in part of this conversation.
Yeah, it's simple. It's like a camera pan that's like as simple as a camera movement as you can get, but it's amazing how many directors limit themselves visually, and that's a little thing, but there's just so many things throughout this trailer where I'm like, these characters seem really fun. John Cena seems to be really fun as this kind of like Captain America type guy. He's talking about he'll eat a whole beach full of dicks if it was for Liberty. So that's the kind of humor that we're also working with, just kind of this crass teenage boy level humor. I'm very excited. This looks vastly better than the original Suicide Squad. It looks like it has a vision. I'm hoping that Warner Brothers kind of backs off, and they hired Gunn for a reason, and I hope that they stick with it. Just like this is his thing, because I think this is what they wanted the first time. They wanted a crowd pleaser. They wanted something that had energy and humor, and people liked the characters. And I think that it's just a trailer, but it looks like that's what they're getting this time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think it was a very smart decision on their part. Excuse me. On their part to make it a red band trailer, because there's a lot of swearing in this trailer, and it's particularly for the original Suicide Squad. And I will say the trailers for that movie were like works of art. The Bohemian Rhapsody trailer I thought it was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I like that movie. I don't think it's a very good movie. I think it's fun. It introduced us to Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, and I love her in that role.
Mm-hmm.
There was some good stuff there. Plus, we shot in Toronto, and I actually went and saw them shooting some stuff. So, like the car chase with the Joker, I saw that. That was cool.
Oh, right on.
I didn't get to see the Batmobile. It was too late at night. But
my condolences.
But like it's a movie that has a lot of problems, and particularly the editing is just a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
I am very curious to see what James Gunn is going to do with this. And one thing that struck me from this trailer is it really looks like a throwback action movie. Like it's got a kind of a 70s vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which I can't quite articulate how, but it still came across to me very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the posters and stuff that James Gunn has kind of been kind of pushing out, it feels very much like kind of a B movie action film from the 70s, kind of a Howling Commandos. No, that's not Howling Commandos. That's from Marvel. But essentially like the Dirty Dozen kind of things, original Inglourious Bastards, spelled correctly, unlike Tarantino's. It's just that level. It's just that kind of thing of like, there's a bit of a grit to it. And it's about like a group of kind of ragtag, kind of larger than life characters that are going on this suicide mission. So yeah, I think that like that kind of B movie 70s vibe is still in there, even though it's kind of under the veneer of kind of like a big budget CG heavy kind of Hollywood film of the modern era. It's a good mix. And so I picked up on that too.
Okay. Andris?
Yes.
Cool. One thing I will say that I don't know much about the character King Shark. I think he's on one of the CW shows or something, but I don't think the CGI on him looks great. Although that moment where he like literally rips a guy in half, that was awesome. I don't think it looks great. It may not be done yet. They may still be tweaking it, but I think for a while there, a lot of people were under the impression that Taika Waititi was going to be voicing him because he's on the cast list, but he was never named who he was going to be. But now it's pretty much confirmed, and you can hear it in the trailer once you know it's Sylvester Stallone, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I already love him. People were shown kind of side by side pictures of like the King Shark CG from the Flash show, and he's like this built, scary monster shark. And in this, he's like this chubby, kind of overweight, great white shark. And I feel like he's going to be a similar kind of character to Groot. Like he seems pretty dumb. Like there's just a scene of him be like hand. But he's like a big lovable oaf, and I'm excited to see him, eat people alive. That's fantastic.
Yeah. All right. I think we could probably move on at this point.
Yeah.
Is it good with you guys? All right. So our final topic today is one of Andris's patented discussions. So Andris, would you like to read the question?
Yes, I would. Let's get the questions out. All right, here we go, gentlemen. Television has come a long way as far as adapting films. What is your favorite series that took the concept and built on it substantially? And what movie do you feel would be ripe for future adaptions?
So, Andris.
Yes.
I was going to say, do you want to go first?
All right, sure, yeah. The show that I feel built, this is why all right. So, edit that out.
Okay.
The show that made me think this question up is It's a sci-fi original. It was called 12 Monkeys. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it. Terry Gilliam made the film 12 Monkeys back in the 90s,
Mhm.
and people love that movie. It's a great movie. The show, the reason I chose that one is because with, I think it's 4 seasons or maybe it's 5 seasons, they built so much to the universe that they created that it's insane, where you're like, yeah, no, with a film you wouldn't be able to do all of this, but no, it's fantastic. And I am going to plug it. Go watch 12 Monkeys.
Really? Man, I remember seeing, I think when the first season was coming out, and I wrote it off. Like, no, I didn't watch it. It was
Yeah.
kind of pretentious of me, but I was just like, oh, they're doing a 12 Monkey show. That's gonna end after 1 season. But it had 4 seasons.
It was like 4 seasons and it didn't get canceled. They just wrapped things up. So the
that's awesome.
story, yeah, it
Nice.
gets to finish itself off. And I don't blame you, actually, even if you watch the first 2 episodes. I can't remember the second episode. I know the first episode, you're just like, eh. But once again, as I said earlier, I always give things multiple episodes to see where they're going with it, and it goes in insane directions. It's a sci-fi time travel story, and I don't think I can think of any other like time travel show that can handle, like, it approaches, causality and cause and effect and what happens and paradoxes. I mean, they use paradoxes as a weapon at some point in the show. It is fantastic.
That sounds cool.
You're selling me pretty hard right now.
Yeah, that sounds
no,
pretty awesome, actually.
I even I rewatched it recently with my girlfriend. She'd never seen it, and I was like, "Hey, let's watch." And I was like, "Oh, this holds up. This holds up."
Nice,
And
man.
did you say it was from Sci-Fi Channel?
Yeah, it was a Sci-Fi Channel original, which I don't know how good their track record is, because when I think sci-fi, I think like Battlestar Galactica, Flash Gordon, which was awful. Flash Gordon was a bad show. So I took a chance with 12 Monkeys and I stuck with it, and holy crap.
Mhm.
I'm a big Doctor Who fan. I'm gonna have to mention this. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. Like, I've watched all 26 seasons of the old series, and I feel like 12 Monkeys is what the revival of Doctor Who should be, because it's like the time travel is just it's so good. It's just
Yeah.
so 12 Monkeys, go watch it.
Dope.
And to answer the second one, a movie that I feel would benefit from the show treatment for me would be, I mean, it's a franchise, but Mad Max. That is an entire universe you could do so much interesting things with. And,
Mhm.
We are at a point where the market for post-apocalyptic shows is fairly saturated, but still, I feel like you could do a lot. I mean, it's the one that started the post-apocalyptic trend, really, arguably, and I feel like we could get a lot of good stuff out of it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, that'd be
No,
cool.
I could see that working, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, shall I go next?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna flip it. I'm gonna say what I'd like to see turned into a series first.
Okay.
And I'm not cheating. I'm bending the rules a little bit, because in both cases I'm talking about a movie that was based on a book first. But we'll get to that. So one thing I would love to see, a movie being turned into a series and taken in a different direction. And we've talked about this movie on the podcast before, unless it was one of our practice episodes, I don't remember. Stephen King's The Running Man. I am a big fan of the Arnie movie. It's big 80s Arnie action silliness. But as I've said many times in my life, it's not an adaptation of the book. It's an adaptation of like the basic premise of the book. The book is completely different. And I think if you did like a 9-10 episode miniseries, and I was thinking earlier today, if you did it like 24, where it's just like, or not necessarily in real time, but maybe like each episode is a day in this guy's life as he's trying to, survive. I think that could be really cool. Make it very like noir and not big schlocky action, because the book's not like that at all. I think that would be really cool. Now, of course, it is being developed by Edgar Wright's is developing it to direct a remake of it, which presumably will be closer to the original book. And the book's not that long, but I think if you could expand it, I think it could be really cool as a series.
Court, I'm surprised at you, because I had an idea. I felt like you were going to mention a Stephen King series, but that wasn't it. Because I thought that The Running Man, I could see that working as like a 2-hour-ish kind of movie. But I was really, I thought you were going to say The Dark Tower, because I knew how big of a King fan you are, and considering how not so great that movie was, I felt like that was, I was going to bet money. I was like, oh, he's going to say The Dark Tower. But no, you didn't feel that? Did that cross your mind?
That didn't, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Ooh,
Haven't read it.
Oh, really?
I read the first
Really?
book. I read the
Okay.
first book, The Gunslinger,
Mhm.
which has one of the greatest opening lines out of any book I've ever read, and I believe I remember it word for word. It's the man in black fled into the desert, and the gunslinger followed, and I got chills. And then the rest of the book kind of bored me. I'm not a big fan of King's more fantasy type stuff.
Uh-huh.
It's not. I like his horror. I like his horror. I really like his drama stuff.
Mhm.
His fantasy often doesn't do anything for me, and it just feels like such a commitment. Because I mean, The Gunslinger is a wee little book, but most of them are 14,000 pages, and there are about 27 of them. So
Yeah.
yeah. Now, granted, from what I've heard about it, it would probably make for a great series for sure.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, that was not my pick.
Gotcha. And so you're thinking more like mini series for The Running Man? You think it'd be a good like kind of one season show?
Yeah, and
I
this is
gotcha.
this is generally my rule of thumb when it comes to adapting a book.
Mhm.
I think it should always be a limited series because
Yeah.
like what happened with Under the Dome, hashtag blunder the dome. I've
Got
been
him.
I've been
Got
making
him.
I've been making that joke for years. When you're adapting a book, the way TV works is if people are watching it, then it'll keep going. And if people aren't watching it, it'll get canceled. If you get a mini series, okay, I have this many episodes to tell this story. You make it, you're done. But if
Yeah.
you get canceled in the middle, then your story just ends. And if you get extended, then you got to make up some stuff, and who knows if that's going to work. So,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
when it becomes Dexter,
right.
Yeah.
lumberjack.
The what was the other one? Oh my goodness. Now I'm blanking.
Welcome to my world.
Wait,
Right?
of the TV show that you thought was a good adaptation of a movie.
Yes. Okay. So it took me a while to think of what it would be. And then as soon as I've thought of it, I was like, yep, it's Hannibal. It's
Oh,
straight
yeah.
up Hannibal.
Dude. Okay.
For me, it's like, listen, I've read all of the books in that series except for Hannibal Rising, which I didn't care about. I've seen all the movies, including Manhunter, which was the original adaptation by
That's a
Michael
good
Mann.
one.
That's a good one.
I don't love it. I liked Brian Cox's Hannibal Lecter. I thought that was
Yeah.
cool, but it was like very 80s, and I think William Peterson was his name. I don't think he was good in it.
Mhm.
It had that like Michael Mann style, which was cool. But for me, aside from Silence of the Lambs, none of the movies are very good.
Mhm.
I think Hannibal, the show, first off, is like, I think it's brilliant. I
Yes.
think what Brian Fuller did with that to, because he really kind of makes the story his own, but brings in elements from the different books. The way he has the sort of visualizations of the like inky elk that sort of represents Hannibal, or all the stuff that's going on in Will Graham's mind. I think Hugh Dancy is wonderful in it. I think Mass Mikkelsen, he's my favorite Hannibal Lecter now,
Mhm.
simply because Anthony Hopkins is always great, but only one of the movies is good. Whereas Hannibal is consistently great throughout, except the first half of season 3 was a little bit slow. The food on the show, visually, it was stunning. Shot in Toronto. Like, Scott Thompson from Kids in the Hall is in it. You guys probably don't know what I'm talking about, but trust me. Yeah, Hannibal is amazing. There's still hope that it might get resurrected at some point. But if you guys have not watched Hannibal, do yourselves a favor. Not to mention the way it pushed the envelope for, I believe it was on Fox. It was on network TV, and it's one of the.
It
pretty
was
bloody.
NBC, I think.
Was it
And
NBC?
yeah,
You're right.
yeah.
You're right. It's
I
NBC.
watched it too, and yeah, no, it's shocking. You're like, this was on network television,
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the killings, they look like performance art murders.
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's
That's
it's an amazing show. Sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
No, that's a great choice. Because I love Silence of the Lambs. Like I think that movie's just phenomenal. And I appreciated that Hannibal the show wasn't trying to be Silence of the Lambs. Like it
Yeah.
took the characters, it took kind of the elements from the series, from the books, but it really didn't feel like it was just kind of retreading. Like it had its own vision. And yeah, I think that's a great choice. That's a terrific show if people haven't checked it out yet.
So good. All right, Chris, man, you're up.
Cool. I'll start with a TV show that I think is quite good. I forget, Andres, was the question, do you think that the show is objectively better than the movie, or is it just a good adaptation of it?
What it does is it's taken the film concept and really built on it to where it's like it does so much more than, I mean, you know, with films, obviously you can only do so much in a 2-hour window. You are.
I'm dancing. Okay. I'm gonna have to just say two quick ones because I'm on the fence about both of them. You'll see what I mean.
Okay.
One of them is Westworld. I think
I know why.
if you've seen the I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yes.
If you've seen the original Westworld by Michael Crichton, it's fun. It's an interesting kind of fun little Western. It's not great by any means, but it's an enjoyable time and it's a cool premise. The very first season of Westworld, I think, is fantastic. And I think that they expanded on it in such a beautiful way. And it really was like, yeah, this works so much better as a series, or at least a mini series, which I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. That's the issue, is that I don't hate the other two seasons like a lot of people do, but I do think that it is kind of taking a step down and it doesn't seem like they know where they're going. So that's why I'm hesitant on saying that one, because it was a terrific first season and then kind of seems like they're kind of like meandering. But I do think that the first season is better than the entire movie, the original. The other one I was thinking of is that this is, I think, objectively a better show than Westworld, but none of the seasons, there's 4 seasons so far, are actually better than the original movie, and that's Fargo. Now, I love Fargo, the movie by the Coen brothers. It's you know, one of their masterpieces, in a career full of amazing movies. If you haven't seen Fargo, like, holy shit, check it out. It's so good. One of the best of the 90s.
Yeah.
In the show, if you guys haven't seen it, what I appreciated is that it's an anthology series. So it's not trying to mimic the first one. Each season is its own thing. It's its own self-contained story. So it's kind of best of both worlds, where it's like kind of like a mini series in that the one season has an arc for characters and stories. So it doesn't feel like they're stretching things longer than they need to. But at the same time, you know, they're able to have multiple seasons because of that. It's really quite good. I liked all 4 seasons. Some are far better than others. But I'd say all of them are worth checking out. They all have amazing performances, some incredible writing. Some of the characters are you know, as good as any of the weird, wacky characters that the Coen brothers have come up with before. So if you haven't checked it out, honestly, you can jump in at any point. You don't need to watch it in order. Just kind of read the synopsis of each season, whichever one you think strikes your fancy first. Jump right in. I think you'd be interested. Yeah.
One question though, should you watch the film before watching the show?
I'd say yes, partially because the film is amazing. And it's also 2 hours. So you could, you know, watch it instead of watching an entire series. You're not going to miss out on anything story-wise or character-wise, but I think that it will help kind of, you'll appreciate the show more if you've seen if you've seen the movie, because it takes a lot of the themes, a lot of the humor, a lot of the style of it, of kind of like, it's this pitch black comedy, you know, it's like there's very serious topics they talk about, like murder and kidnap and crime, and it's funny, but it's not like broad kind of like it's very like, if you've seen the movie, then you know that one of the biggest gags in it, or one of the biggest laughs in it, is seeing someone try to push down a foot into a wood chipper. That's the level of dark humor that we're laughing at. If you're like, I don't know if I can laugh at someone going through the wood chipper, it's not the right show for you. But if you can kind of see the weird kind of humor through it, then I'd recommend it.
I haven't watched the show. I love the movie, but a couple of my friends are always telling me like, you gotta watch the show. Are the Coen brothers involved in any way?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
It's pretty much headed by this guy named Noah Hawley, who also did Legion on FX,
Oh,
which is
okay.
also a very good show. He's great. He starts the first season starts a little too close to the original movie in the sense of like it seemed like he didn't want to stray too far from the formula, but each season that goes forward, he kind of becomes more and more bold in the direction he takes it, and he's good. It's good shit. Yeah, so I'd recommend that. As far as a series or as far as a movie that I think that would lend itself to a good show,
Yes.
this is going to be a controversial opinion.
Ooh.
And I want to stress this that I am not a diehard massive fan of this franchise. In fact, I don't even think that it needed to be a franchise.
Ooh.
But I think that something that would lend itself to a good ongoing show, not a mini series, but something that it's like this could have multiple seasons, is Ghostbusters. Now, like I said, I'm not like, there's two things. Andris gave me a look and I know what the look is, and I'll explain my thought process. I like the first Ghostbusters. It's a good movie. I'm not like, oh my God, the funniest thing I've ever seen. Some people put it way high on a pedestal for some reason, and I don't get it. The sequel is okay. I did not like the 2016 remake, and I do find it annoying that, you know, they're trying to, there's always trying to be like to resuscitate this show, or sorry, this movie in this franchise. I don't think they need to. However, the concept of kind of like a kind of dry-witted comedy show about some schlubby, you know, guys or girls ghost hunting, I think that's funny. I think that's prime for like each episode. You could get some really interesting kind of ghost designs and situations, and like it could be kind of mysterious to an extent of like, you know, it's not just like we have to zap some ghosts. There could be some interesting backstory. And if you get really good comedic actors, it seems like one of those that it's a premise at the very least that I think it's like, yeah, I could see that working as like a TV show. Again, it comes with the caveat that we're kind of oversaturated with Ghostbusters. Like if it was just one movie and then like they made a TV show out of it, that'd be awesome. They did technically make an animated show out of it. I want to throw that out there.
I think there were two actually.
There
There
are two animated shows.
I think so. Yeah.
There was the real Ghost. Well, three. Well,
It's-
2.5. I'll explain.
There's one with there's a show that's from like the 50s or 60s called The
Yes.
Ghostbusters that has nothing to do with the movie. It has a guy in a gorilla suit.
Yes, it does.
Look it up anyway. But so that technically counts. But yeah, like I said, if it wasn't oversaturated, if there wasn't three movies with a fourth coming along the way with comic books and an animated show, I'd say it's a no-brainer. Now it's kind of a hard pitch, but I really do think like it's a solid premise. It's a solid premise, and I think that it could lead to many good stories.
I'm in agreement, actually.
Oh I was actually you're normally the voice of dissent here.
Well,
I was thinking as you were describing it, like one angle that you could take that could be really funny. You know, for a while there were all those reality shows of like the guys who go into the houses to do hunting.
Yeah.
So if you did it like an Office style documentary show about that, but those actually having to go bust ghosts with a lot of like improv and stuff, that could be gold.
Yeah, I think it's a good premise. I agree.
Yeah, no, because the market for actually, it's funny you should mention that. Me and the girlfriend just started rewatching Ghost Adventures. Did you guys know there's 20 seasons of this damn thing?
What? Right.
Yes.
Oh my God.
The market for ghost reality shows is so saturated. It almost feels like a no-brainer that there would be a mockumentary.
Yeah.
For that.
Right.
Or you could go the other. I mean, it's a general enough premise where you could go either direction, like a more traditional, hey, what if we did this? Or if you did a mockumentary. Either way, no, I'd be hell yeah. Because those shows, there's a thorough lack of intention. I mean, obviously they're gonna play it straight laced, but there's enough unintentional humor in there where you're like, this could
Yeah. I'm glad you guys agree, because Ghostbusters seems like a hot topic. It's like a big trigger trigger button kind of issue for people online. There are some diehard fans, in anything you even suggest that they're going to be doing a sequel or something that doesn't involve the original cast and crew, they get their pitchforks out. So I thought that there would be some dissent, but yeah, people in the comments, don't be too mean. If you disagree, if you're like, you can't touch it, Bill Murray, I hope he, shits on your car for even suggesting it. Just don't.
And he will.
He will. That seems like something he might do.
Something on Cameo for like $50.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Bill Murray shitting on your car. All right.
Well, I think on that note, that's the show.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to thank you guys all for watching. Chris and I will be back next week. Andris will not be here next week, but he'll be back the following week.
Yes, I will.
We don't know what we'll be talking about yet, but before we sign off, Chris, where can people follow you online?
You can go to my Instagram handle. It's called The Art of Light and Shadow. Just doing kind of a little daily blog of the movies that I'm watching. So come check it along and help expand your cinema viewing habits with me. The Art of Light and Shadow.
Andris?
Do a YouTube search for Cheap Thrills Unspeakable Terror. I do reviews of low-budget sci-fi and horror from the dawn of cinema to the modern era.
Ooh.
And of course, you guys can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Courtshake, or here on my YouTube channel. I'll have links to all of that stuff in the description box below. We want to encourage you guys to jump into the comments. Tell us what you thought of Falcon and Winter Soldier. Did you watch Invincible? Are you looking forward to Suicide Squad? Or is there a show based on a movie that you would like to see? Or would you buy into Chris's Ghostbuster show? Whatever your thoughts, jump down there. Let us know what you think. Of course, hope you guys will hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell, the YouTube stuff, you know how that works. And of course, we hope you guys are all safe and healthy in this time. We want to say thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.
Have a good week, guys.
Later.
Bye.